copyright is a vital thing which protects your investment and ensures that the uniqueness of your product will not be sold a few times in a round.
You can have the situation in which you have the rights and just the developer who work with your product have the same rights, and he can claim those rights when you start to making money.
We still face cases when people lost everything due to the one point in contract, which called ownership.
Hello guys, so let's go straight to the point. Today we're going to speak about the product ownership and all of the aspects of code ownerships that you need to know to be sure that things that you're working on, the things that you invest money and time on is actually owned by you, not by someone else. And also today we're going to give you a few recommendations what you need to do in order to save 100% of property rights of all artifacts that you will have during the software development. And that doesn't mean only code, it also means design, it also means some kind of the music, like anything that you get in the process. In case you invest in that, you're supposed to get the full ownership. At least I believe this is the right approach. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it would seem obvious that you have to be the owner of the product for which you have paid money. However, we still face cases when people lost everything due to the one point in contract, which called ownership. And not looking far back, we had such case just 1 month ago. We have a customer who was working with another development company, and he came to us asking to finish this work. So he wasn't satisfied with the result which the previous team provided to him, and also the level of communication was not satisfied. So when he tell his decision of changing the team to his previous team and asked it to provide the source code for the software, they told him no. So he got absolutely nothing, and he paid for it.
Well, yeah, just to be, because I know about this situation a lot, just to be extremely precise, there was some kind of the invoices that hadn't been paid, but there still was the invoices that was paid. And those guys, they supposed at least give that part of the code that, that they get payment for. But our customer, right now that guy is our customer, they didn't get anything at all. And well, that's a shame, because usually people have some kind of the budget and they spend already maybe 30-20% of that and have nothing at all, even something that other company could continue or whatever. And this is not right. I believe this is the not right approach. So let's discuss how to fix it.
Yeah, it's always sad to hear such stories, but unfortunately they are not uncommon. Why that happened? Well, there can be numerous of reasons, but in my opinion, I think that the core reason is that people just neglect the point of copyrights for the software. In my experience, every third person with whom I negotiate never ask me about our policies of the code ownership. So numbers tell about themselves. So also very often development companies and independent contractor use ownership as the stock in trade. So they can offer you a cheaper price, and in exchange that the ownership will stay with them. And it is and people still agreed for that. And it is very strange for me, because for me it is the same the situation when real estate broker propose you not to charge his commission for the purchase of your new house, in exchange to let's ownership for this new house will belong to him. It is absurd situation, and in the software it is the same.
Yeah, and it sounds absurd when you're talking about the real estate, because that's kind of common thing to everyone understand that. But guys, in the software development the same rules are applied, and well, yeah, that's just ridiculous. So okay, and another very, very important disclaimer here, everything that we're going to talk right now obviously you can go to the court with the good lawyer and you can sue anyone, and that can be solvable in that way. But again, our podcast is about building digital product, not to be the best lawyer in the town, right? And so just please keep that in mind. So we're trying to give you advice how to avoid the bad situation, not how to go straight to the court, right? Because in the end of the day, your product's supposed to generate you money, not generate you problems.
Yeah, so the only thing which I can add to this is that no one of lawyers' feeling was harmed during record of this podcast.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay. Before we understand how the copyright passed to you, we have to understand who are the owner of the software from the very beginning. So let's outline two definitions. The first one is the author or creator. In the relation to the work, it is a person or organization who creates the original work. The second one is the copyright. It's property rights which automatically arise when in the process of creating original work in a tangible form. So when original work is created, drawn, written, wherever, the ownership are on the creator. So an exception to this rule is when work is done by employer during the course of his employment. So in this case, first ownership are on the employer.
Okay, so now here's a very important thing that I need to explain to you guys. So again, you just heard the two things, employer and like contractor or independent contractor. And something that you need to know, especially when you go to the Ukraine, for example, like I can speak about Ukraine, 95% of people who work in software development here, they're independent contractor. So you need to understand that difference very well. In case people with whom you work, like your team, is employer of company that you hire, rights for the code automatically transfer to the company, and then you're supposed to have the proper contract where you transfer rights for the code from that company to yourself. But in case you know that people who are working for that company are contractors, you need to clarify, is it true, and it's supposed to be like that they have the contract where they pass their rights to the company and then company pass it to you. So this is very tiny difference, but it's still very important because in case company don't have this line in the contract about passing property rights to them and afterwards to you, that's mean that you can have the situation in which you have the rights and just the developer who work with your product have the same rights, and he can claim those rights when you start to making money. Just like this is something very important that you need to know about before you actually start working. That kind of common thing. And by the way, when you're working with the freelancer, it's also independent contractor, and in case you're working without the outsource company that help you, well, also be sure that you transfer in all of the rights. Don't rely on sign agreement of Upwork or another freelance vendor that you use, right? And just be sure that you sign some kind of the additional thing that pass the rights of everything to you.
And I know that we had this situation in the company, right, when one of our projects was sold.
Oh yeah. That's really cool example here. So we have the great, and we're still working with this great project. I can't name what is exactly and what it's all about because of the very strict contract. The only thing that I can tell that they recently has been bought by, I can't tell by whom, but they are the biggest and the first competitor of Apple. So just like that, right? So during all of that due diligence process, their lawyers contacted us and asked us to give them the special document in which we completely 100% agree that we pass all of the rights, despite the fact that still that line was in the contract, because this is just the standard thing actually for us, right? But still, during that due diligence process, they contacted us and asked that additional assignment that we really don't have anything about their ownership, and passed it all to them. Moreover, they asked us to have the separate document with each of the member who used to work with this project during all 5 years. Some of those members don't even work in our company anymore, and I called them and contacted them and asked, hey man, could you please sign this document? What is that? Oh, that's the document. Remember that project you worked 3 years ago? Well, you passed all of the rights. And they was like very confused. That was kind of
I will not put my signature on it.
yeah, like some of them was like, what the hell? Like, we have the contract, everything is right. I said, well, yes, but they asking me and all of that kind of thing. Well, I mean, that's how important it is. I mean, when big company of some main competitor of Apple asking you to do, that's very important, right?
Yeah, so to conclude this part, company or contractor are the first owner of any copyright on the software. So at the very beginning of your engagement with vendor or contractor, you have to agree about terms of how they pass this exclusive property copyright to you. So, and usually all the terms and conditions are defined in the contract before start the actual, which you signed before start the actual work. So, okay. I think we are okay with this part. So let's move to the next thing, which are documents discussion.
Yeah, enough of the theory, right?
Yeah, so we have two main documents when we're working with a vendor. It is non-disclosure agreement and actual contract or service agreement. So non-disclosure agreement, like every reputable company needs to have its own non-disclosure agreement, which addresses to its specific business need. Linky, can you tell us when you need to sign non-disclosure agreement?
Non-disclosure agreement is signed to protect clients' intellectual property and prevent issues around original ideas that might potentially bring profit if transformed into software.
Thank you, Linky. I have read this sentence 20 times, so let me repeat it for you again. Non-disclosure agreement, or shortly NDA, is signed to protect clients' intellectual property or to protect any issues around original idea that might potentially bring profit if transformed into software. So important, if transformed into software. So this sentence break up very big stereotype about NDA.
Yeah,
NDA don't protect your ideas.
Yeah, like, guys, ideas is not protected by anything at all. Like, anything at all. Like, for me as the CEO, when someone contact me and then they're like, oh, let's sign an NDA, I said, well, okay, let's do. I mean, that's not a problem. We sign an NDA, and afterwards I expect, to send me something. I expect to send me some, I don't know, code snippet, some kind of the unique algorithm, some kind of the data, some kind of the server access, whatever, like something physical. But then people just connected me and tell me about their great idea of the new Facebook plus Snapchat plus Instagram plus some other shit. And that's it. And nothing like, nothing physical in a sense, nothing documented, nothing at all. And they are like, but don't tell about my idea anyone. Guys, NDA do not protect your idea. I obviously will not tell anyone about your idea. That just doesn't worth it, right? But again, NDA is to protect something that you have, some kind of the expression of your idea. Again, code, access, data, whatever, but not just idea itself. So for me, when people ask to sign NDA, but they actually have nothing except just words, well, for me, it's the sign of kind of an experienced guy in the area, right? So, I mean, to be honest, by statistic, those people who start the conversation, let's sign an NDA, maybe only 10% actually in the end really doing their projects. Everyone else just are not serious. And I don't want to offend anyone, but just, you need to be professional. You need to know what document the response for what. And also you need to not mismatch contract, as Oksana already mentioned. and the NDA. So NDA is something that you sign before you work with the company to be sure that that company do not, like, non-disclosure agreement. They don't give information about anything you give them. Again, anything physical you give them.
Corporate information also.
Yeah, corporate information, like who is involved, like maybe you just got big investment from Google. That's already sensitive information that can be protected by NDA. Like you don't want anyone to know that Google give you investment. That's already something.
Yeah,
right?
and actually contract always include NDA inside.
Yeah,
it
by
is
the
all-
way, contracts always include NDA, like at least rights contracts. And so again, you can have like 100 NDAs with all of the people you starting to discuss your project, but only one service of the agreement with somebody with who you actually start working to. So don't mismatch those things. And contract, they have much more things. They actually have term of communication, of payments, of process, all of that kind of things is on the contract. NDA just protect you about not sharing information about you and some kind of the artifacts that you already have.
So if you didn't know before that NDA didn't protect your ideas and just word, right now you will know it.
Yeah, sure.
So let's move from theoretical to practical. Right now we will give you a few tricks or tips which you can use to actually protect yourself from any issues with the copyrights.
Yeah, so and before Oksana start doing that, sorry Oksana, I'm an interrupter today, right? I will give you, the rule number 0 and the main rule. Look guys, when you doing any software and actually any business in the world, first of all, you're supposed to work on the like normal, sustainable human relationship. Like you will not need all of these recommendations we will give you right now in case you have normal connections with people you work with, right? This is the first thing you need to have. But still, we are in the business. Sometimes things go wrong, and that would be good in case that somewhere highlighted and the process is set up in the way that you as the product owner is protected. And now Oksana will tell you what you need to do in order to get this.
So the first thing which we recommend to do is to keep the code base on your repository. So you can use such tool as a GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, or any available tool for the repository available today. So you can do this in 2 ways. So the first way, and actually way which we usually do, so you can create your repository, your own repository based
Private
on your
repository, by the way, that's important, like not public.
Based on your credential, and just provide development team access to it, so they can work directly on your repository. The second option is when development team work on their repository, and every 2 weeks, for example, they copy the code to your repository after you pay the invoice for this work done. So in this case, everybody on the
spot. Yeah.
Yes, on the same spot, and some period of time, you receive a portion of the code for which you have paid. If we talk about design, for example, you can ask team to provide you also some period of time to provide you the source file of this design, and you can store them on your local drive or Google Drive. And in case your team work with such tool as Figma, for example, you can download all the files by yourself. And this method also works for any other artifacts which are created during cooperation with the development team. So if it is documentation, some diagrams, tables, you can download and save everything what they provide to you. And for what is important, you have already paid.
Yeah, well, I believe the only thing that we can add here is, again, you can use only those things that you paid for. I mean, in case you, in case you have the agreement in which your team, doing things up front, then you take it from them and didn't pay it. Well, most probably, at least the good contract is supposed to tell that they still own the copyright, right? They still own the ownership. So don't be deceived. Well, I mean that's kind of other side of this medal, right? Yeah.
I have one more things to say. Actually, the second recommendation.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so the second recommendation can seem obvious, but it's worth mentioning. Read contract carefully. So it should describe the process of how the exclusive property copyrights are passed to you in details. And also important to make a note about contract termination terms. So in what condition you will lose this copyright. For example, if your contract are for a year, what happens next? Like copyright goes back to the company. Like, so you have to deal with all these details, really read it carefully. And like, I think that the easiest option is just to ask your company lawyer if you have such, just to check the contract and understood if it's have all the requirements which you need.
So yeah, I mean, this is somewhere where lawyers supposed to really help you here. So yeah. Another important issue here is how you need to treat the open source. So like, keep in mind that I don't know, that's from head, but I believe that at least 80% of all of the software in the world, they are written by, you still can get my joke about liars, right? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just can't stop.
Okay. So let's go to the point back. Like, at least 80% of the software that happening in the world is based on open source technology. Like, I don't know, Laravel framework is open source, Ruby, JavaScript, obviously, right? That's all open source things that anyone in the world can use. I mean, they have license, but you don't need to pay anyone for that license. So, funny thing here that that technologies itself is free, but when you already build something unique, that's already can be protected by the copyright and already can be sued, and again, expression of the idea. So you need to think about these things like bricks and concrete. Like no one interested in just bricks and concrete because anyone can have it. But when you already build the unique house above that, well, that's something that can be already protected. Here's the same thing. When you build some kind of the unique algorithm, some kind of the great design, UX, together with the great algorithm will give you very high efficiency, whatever. Well, that's already something that can be protected. But you can't just take the, some kind of the library which is open source and tell I'm claiming my rights for that. No, that doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and I actually have an interesting story about battle for the brick between two giants of information technology world, which is Oracle and Google. So Oracle claimed Google that he copied 9 lines of the code from their copyrighted Java code, and they asked for that $9 billion compensation.
Again, guys, $1 billion for each.
9.
9.
9 billion.
No, but I mean $1 billion for each of the line of the code. So don't ask me if software is expensive, right?
Yeah, so let me explain how this battle actually started. So in 2025, Google gathered a team of the developers and they decided to build the future leading mobile operation system called Android, which we all know today. And the Java language was selected as the primary technology. At that time, Java was belonged to the company called Sun Microsystem, and Google tried to pay them $40 million to license Java for Android, but talks fell apart. So what Google did, he decided to write open source code and replicate everything what they couldn't license from Java. And everything have changed when in 2009, Oracle bought Sun Microsystem, and they decided to tell that things which Google made is illegal. So actually that they replicated this code from Java. They, with all 15 million lines of code that Oracle checked, only 9 lines was literally copied. And that was actually these 9 lines for which they asked 9 billion. And the most funny thing in this story is that this 9 line of code implements a function which any general developer can write in a few minutes. And furthermore, it will be very hard for the developer to write this function other way as these 9 lines mentioned ahead. So and also one interesting things which I read in articles that the judge who was in charge for this battle actually knew programming, and he write programs for fun and like just some games for himself and his wife. And he told that he by himself write blocks of code like that 100 or even more of time. So judge didn't buy it, and at the end Oracle just left with nothing.
Well, okay, they're happy that they at least don't have some kind of the additional expenses. But yeah, this example is proving you how important that kind of things of ownership could be on that high level of of the big mastodont companies. And I believe every owner of digital product, they would like someday get to that point of being big and wealthy and all of that kind of things, right? I believe the last one thing that I need to mention for today is very important thing. So usually when you work with someone, that someone would like to share that he is working with you, especially when the product is really good. And sometimes you may not give them that right. Like you may tell, no, I don't want you to claim that you developed this. Now, here's very important things. When we ask to put something in our portfolio, we never claim the rights of ownership. Like we don't claim for the money that it made. We just want to be honored and tell everywhere in our website, for example, that, hey, we developed this stuff. So the only reason for you is to deny your software development team or designer or anyone else or copywriter, it depends with whom you're working, to not doing that is like not knowing everyone that they worked with. So it may be few reasons. For example, you don't want to know, you don't want your investors know that you work with freelancers, for example. Well, they may be that kind of the reason. So in that case, you may tell that, hey, I don't want you to claim anything about that thing. Sometimes, like in that example that I mentioned you about the due diligence company, that company didn't want to know that we are working with the product because that product is extremely secured. And when you break your vendor, when you break your partner, you actually break the main core of the product. And that's also the reason. So the other reason may be securable. But when you're the startup and when you are like the middle-sized business, when you are the small business, and even in case you're a big business and there is no proper reason, give the chance to your partners to tell everyone about they are working with you. That will help them, and that also will help you because, that's another point of the advertising for you. I mean, that's another
especially
point.
Especially if you start up.
Yeah, especially if you start up. But that's not only about the startups. I mean, give people the chance to bring you new customer, but by telling about you to everyone else. So that's not the point. I mean, the only one is those one that I just talked about. And I believe this is the last one we need to mention here about the property rights and that theme. I believe we covered every of the pain point that we usually see in people with whom we work.
Yeah. So to make a conclusion of what we have talked today, so copyright is a vital thing which protect your investment and ensures that the uniqueness of your product will not be sold a few times in a round. So you have to agree about all the terms and policies of passing exclusively property copyrights to you from the very beginning of your engagement with the vendor. It's important to do from the very beginning. So, and let's outline a few main things which we have discussed. So, as I mentioned, agree about copyrights at the beginning of your engagement. Do not trade ownership to save a few dollars in development.
Yeah.
Keep code in your repository and save artifacts in your Google Drive. Read contract carefully. And remember the analogy of Andrew about blocks and creeks.
Yeah, and I believe the only last thing to add, keep the healthy relationship with people you're working with. Because in case you will not need any of this advice. But still, do this. Thank you for your attention for today. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.